Okay, welcome Oliver to the Biohacker Babes podcast. Thank you for joining us. Your evening, my lunchtime, Renee's breakfast. We're spanning the entire day, so we're so grateful to have you in your evening time.
Thank you for having me here.
We're really excited to share some education around shopping for quality nutrition, food, and supplements. I think it's really difficult to be a nutrition and health consumer these days. Like reading labels and understanding sourcing and quality ingredients, I think could be a full-time job. And I don't know anyone that has extra time in their day for that. And for me personally, just when I think about how I've in the past thought that I found the best option for a particular food or supplement, it's uh there's always like another level up. Time passes and then I learn like, oh, there's something better and better. Such is life. But we're very excited for this reason to learn more about Puori and to go a little bit deeper into your backstory and the back end of the Puori products. And of course, incredible companies and products usually come out of a personal story or need for finding something better in your own life. So we're curious to drop in and hear about your story and how you stepped into this industry.
Yeah, and my God, what a like dive into an industry, right? But it wasn't what I kind of initially planned, but that's how it often goes. It was a passion on the side, and I was actually studying something completely different, right? And then I fell in love with like training, health, wellness, preventative health in general. So yeah, lots to share.
Yeah. So you were already in the space as a personal trainer. I believe your background was initially business, but then got excited about health and fitness. And then what was the need to create something? You weren't able to find what you needed. And how did you know that it wasn't good enough?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story into it because I think when you come in and you guys know that, and I think the audience and the listeners know that for as well. When you go into health and wellness, there's so many different routes to a better outcome. It's not like go in this direction. You eat keto, you do paleo, you do vegan, you do like there's so many different outcome like different directions that can have different outcomes for different people. The same goes for training. Like you need CrossFit, you need Pilates, you need strength training, you need this type. Like there's it's really hard to understand as the consumer. But there was one
Mm-hmm.
thing when we were diving into that on the nutrition side, the food side of it, that was actually environmental toxins, and I'll touch on that in a second. So when we started to be passionate about health and wellness and diet and what you kind of were looking at, we were looking at what are things that is most commonly missing from our diets. When we look at a general Western diet, the people that were coming into the gym, generally healthy people, people that cared about themselves, what were they lacking? And the first thing we were looking at the time was omega-3. Omega-3 versus omega-6s due to the diets, due to how our the animals that are supposedly having omega-3 in us, they were dieting. So like the diet of the diet, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking at these imbalances and saw like ratios that would like suddenly in the Western world going maybe from, let's say, 1 part omega-3 to 15 parts omega-6. And that depends a little bit on who you ask and where you go. But when we looked historically, that wouldn't probably have shifted more than like 1 to 4 or 4 to 1 in various ratios, depending on if it was like closer to ocean living or more inland living people back in days. So we were like, okay, that's interesting. One part is anti-inflammatory, the other one is pro-inflammatory. Like you need this balance. It's pretty easy. You need to, if you don't get enough like fish or quality omega-3 in your diet, add omega-3. And okay, that makes sense. It's a data point. We could do blood work on each other. We were doing interesting things to kind of understand the gaps in the people we were working with, and I was working with in the gym. But then one thing was like every single that pointed us in the direction was saying one thing that like kind of struck us right out the gate. Just remember when you start to consume like fish oil, make sure it's free from mercury or lead or any other environmental toxins that might be in fish because our oceans are polluted. And we are like in our 20s, just consumers, maybe critical consumers, some would say. It was like, okay, that makes sense. We're gonna go down to the pharmacies, the health food store, and we're gonna ask them about, how many parts per billion of lead is in your fish oil. And we're getting like weird faces and nobody's really getting us any answers. And like, I don't
Yeah.
think there's lead in the fish. But everybody says that, be aware that it's super pure and so on. And most of the brands on labels were claiming this is really pure or great stuff. But when we were asking for data points, we couldn't get a single data point in the regular stores in Denmark. And maybe Denmark on the fish oil side was a little behind in some of the things. Maybe there was somebody out there who could give us, but that was our experience. And we thought, here's something that's missing. You have a full group of people that have a really hard time in the health and wellness space to agree on anything. But every single scientist in health and wellness would say, get less lead. Like there's no one that would say, you know, you need a little more heavy metals in your diet. No, that's probably going to be good for you. We were like, how come everybody's talking about this, right? And being worried about it, but nobody is sharing any real numbers or facts. So I gotta just, you know, the brands didn't seem to know when we were writing them as well. So long story short, you know, we felt like there must be an opportunity for a fish oil brand to begin with that will publish that data. Right when you kind of go to their website, you will find a third party that is testing, so you can see how many parts per billion of mercury, lead, dioxins. You know, also we found out oxidation levels, like how fresh is the oil actually, and you know, we found out there's a lot of data points that, you know, the critical consumers should have, and that's how it started. So that's back in 2008 or something like that, when we started to thinking about that, and we felt, you know, there must be room for it. And when we got deeper into it, we found like the same goes for proteins, the same could go for any other kind of high risk of contamination, raw material that we are concentrating into either a food supplement, a food. You know, we know, okay, rice might have the tendency to have more arsenic in it depending on where it grows. How come you don't know that when you buy the rice? But like we have rules now here in Denmark saying like if you're pregnant, don't eat fish more than once a week from this area. But like nobody knows the data point. Nobody knows that fish you're actually eating has more lead in it or not. And we found by just searching the supply chain and going backwards, we found there's no like it's not necessarily like a straight line and say, okay, fish from Norway or the Nordics or something that sounds pure and clean. Not necessarily. Like it doesn't really have to. So we believe that there is a future of transparency based on those data points, especially for the things we know are in risk of contamination. So that's how Puori brand, Pure Origin, you know, we're trying to source these raw ingredients for the different products. That's how we were born.
So admirable.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about so many people, myself included, that would go like, oh, do you have this data or information? Oh, you don't have it? Oh, well, you know, I'll just take it anyways, you know, like we'll
exactly.
wait.
I can't remember. One of you had one of the same, you know, personal passions for dark chocolate that I have.
Probably
so
both of us, right?
A little more Lauren,
okay.
a little more Lauren,
Okay.
but yeah. I mean, I don't, yeah, I love it too.
Oh, I'm afraid of what you're going to say. Heavy metals. Here we go.
Heavy metals. Yeah.
So we've been trying, like we have a vanilla protein and a chocolate, like dark chocolate or basically cacao bean based protein in it. And what we were seeing is that like it was so hard for us, even like we were sourcing organic, you know, quality cacao beans for the product. It was so hard to source this consistently that was pure enough. And knowing that, you know, myself, I love dark chocolate. I can't go down and buy a dark chocolate brand that has that information. Even though it's like it is a data point, they could do some kind of batch testing and share that, so I would know for sure. So right now the tool I have is just I have to vary it. I can't just eat the same, because let's say it has more, like look at how not scientific that is, that I'm just like to avoid as much cadmium as possible, because again there's a lot of good benefits in chocolate and we shouldn't be scared of eating dark chocolate. Like that's not what we're saying in any way. But like, think of that there might be, and we've seen data points where they're 100 times difference. Like, so that could be 100 times more cadmium in this cacao bean versus that cacao bean. So it's a fairly big difference if you're looking at it. And again, maybe the amount in dark chocolate is so little and you're consuming little, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. But we're still seeing if people are consuming a lot of protein powder, and maybe you're an athlete and you're consuming, 2 or 3 protein shakes a day, or you're using it for, then I wouldn't use dark chocolate. I wouldn't eat cacao protein powders. I wouldn't even eat our own. I would eat that once a day or twice maybe, because we know it's pure and we have the data point, but we still know that there is some cadmium and some environmental toxin that will accumulate in the cacao bean that we still haven't found a way to kind of rid of 100%. So
Mhm.
I think it took us
Yeah.
it took us probably 11 different cacao beans, organic cacao beans, to find the one we felt, okay, this was good, but that's the one that works for the batch we have now. So in like, let's say 6 months or 12 months, we got to go through that exercise one more time. And so
Wow.
so some crops are
Yeah.
more annoying when we look at environmental pollution.
That is
Yeah.
annoying. The chocolate.
Yeah, the chocolate, I know. And there was a big article, I think, that came out about a year ago about the top 10 organic brands and how much, different heavy metals they had in them. But I think you pointed out, like, every batch could be different. So even though that article was published a year ago, that doesn't necessarily mean that chocolate bar that you buy today is going to be accurate to that information.
No.
It's always changing.
So it's always changing. So we're still kind
Yeah.
of guessing in that regard. So it's like, I think it's one of those areas of our, we're so sophisticated as human beings in the way we can kind of figure out things, but we still haven't created a system to, knowing where the things we know are bad for us are actually building up so we can remove them, because generally the cacao farmers don't know. It's not like they're like looking for this when they're going out and testing soil quality and so on. So it's not like somebody is, I know, okay, this field is not very good for, farming these crops, but we do it anyway. Like, that's not how it is. It's still just knowledge we don't have. Right.
Right.
So think of it
And
like,
it's natural too.
Yeah,
I think, like, some people think like,
it's
oh,
natural.
they're poisoning us. It's like, well, no, heavy metals are just a natural thing on this planet. It's not like they're injecting it.
Yeah, in the soil. So it depends
Soil.
on
They're
what
not
the soil
injecting,
and
it's a
how the
natural thing on the
air
planet.
blew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what kind of, it can also have been use of fertilizers, or, different, maybe had the area have had different purposes before, there's been some kind of, mining activity nearby. Like, there can be various reasons that kind of plays into what ends up. So it's not necessarily we can just kind of pick and, because generally the amounts that is in soil and are lower. So it's also some kind of accumulation. And that's where we come back. Having one issue over here and eating cacao, that's not an issue. But if we are exposed across, let's say your protein powder every day, your dark chocolate at night, the rice that you consume, the sweet potatoes and whatnot, we don't know the total accumulation of all these numbers. And that's where I think, as we are so sophisticated and trying so hard to be better, let's figure that out also, so we can use the world, like, from a sustainability purpose, the best way. Maybe there's areas that are really good for certain crops, also from an environmental toxin perspective. But yeah, I think that's a discussion further down the line. But we're trying at least to push that information backwards for what we are trying to source. And at first, when we were doing this in the beginning, like, it was too early. Like, there was not enough awareness around it. What we've seen, especially last 5 to 7 years, is the awareness around this is increasing. The consumers are getting more educated. We're getting more, power in like sharing your messages through social media and whatnot. So hopefully, we'll focus on the right things, also the right things, because we don't either want to be like greenwashing or making people scared of something that might not be an issue, right? So,
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
there's the added kind of category of this bio-individualization. Like, maybe not everyone is burdened with this. We have to look at how our body is accumulating and also detoxing. So
Exactly.
yes, we don't need to scare people across the board, but you're making it easier to at least do the shopping, so we can take a breath as we start to put these pieces together.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time with, like, the Clean Label Project, in a nonprofit out of Colorado. And I think for us, Clean Label Project is certifying, like, baby brands, supplement brands, and a lot of different brands. And they do, like, many certifications. They do, like, random testing of the brands they certify. But what we advocate to the Clean Label Project, and what they have created now as well, is, like, they call it transparency promise. It's every single batch of every single product is tested third party, which is a pain in the right, because from a supply chain perspective, it's so hard to control so many things. So it's taken us many years to build up, but we still believe it is based on even the knowledge we have of testing every single thing we've seen across the last many years, all the different products, all the different raw materials, all the different finished materials, because sometimes we find things in finished material, we didn't find the raw material. which also like, how did this end up here, right? Like, so
Mm.
that knowledge point is we believe is the future, and we're seeing it especially in categories such as baby, where we are maybe even more concerned because the population is so vulnerable and so on.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the deal with, like, there was a bunch of baby food that was testing high for heavy metals? What was
Yeah,
that story? Do you remember that?
I think there's been a few, definitely, and I think what we see is often, and we shouldn't, because I don't want to put some ingredients under too much of a loop, because there's good things in rice as well. Now, I mentioned rice before, but we've seen that arsenic accumulate in rice, and then maybe you make a toddler snack based on rice that might have a rice sauce that's been a little bit polluted, it has arsenic in it, and then when they test the product, we find arsenic in this toddler snack, maybe several times more than what Proposition 65 out of California, which is, I would say, the most strict standard you have in the US in terms of actually setting certain limits for categories. But it's not something we as brands have to apply to, but there's nobody testing us, and the brand's not necessarily testing. So it's a little bit hard kind of to get. But if somebody bought our product, sent it to a lab, found something in that product, and then threw it in the way of, let's say, the people or the organizations behind Proposition 65, then we would have a problem. But it's, how often would that happen? If you look at all the products there's on a grocery shelf and so on, it's like 1 in a million that will be tested and found.
Yeah.
So I think these category studies that the nonprofit organizations are carrying out are just trying to shed some light on the different industries, different categories, to make sure that, let's say, brands and consumers, they do a better job. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So the transparency project is part of the clean label project. Is that true? And where else are they kind of navigating the health and wellness industry? Are there a lot of other products that you think maybe we're familiar with? Do we need to be looking for it? Is this the gold standard across the board?
I think it's a really high standard. So if you look at, let's say, and then this is something that we know, the most common or well-known one is organic, which means in many cases, whether it's like baby food or a crop or a protein powder, let's stick with protein powders. An organic certified protein powder, we know that whether it's plant or animal based, that the animal was raised organically, that they were not using pesticides in the feeding and so on, that you can kind of make sure at least that the pesticide side of the equation was controlled. And when we look at organic certified products, most often they don't have any pesticides in it. Sometimes it happens, for various reasons, but most often they don't. So organic is always better. When you look at a clean label certification, like the transparency promise, that we test like one for pesticide panels. So we actually test the final product for pesticides, but we also test for heavy metals, which are not part of the organic certification, which it maybe could be at some point. But that's a different side. We would test in our end, we might test for PFAS, like some of these forever chemicals that we're starting to see sneak in different areas. We might test for bisphenol A and like bisphenol B and some of the more like the materials used for softening plastics and so on that might end up in packaging or in the food or wherever it comes from. So there's several different tests beyond, which was what we're trying to navigate, is saying, okay, what are the risks of contamination in this type of product? Like if we think from a logical, okay, it's a protein powder. It might have BPA, microplastics or anything else because of the way they're contained, because the way they're treated and so on. Pesticides, let's check for that. They might have pesticides due to how animal raised, plant were growing, whatnot. Heavy metals, let's definitely test for heavy metals because, and so on. So we kind of take, okay, these are the most known issues in that type of product. Let's make sure we test for that. So that's how the Clean Label Project certification would work. They would have certain things that they say, we know these are the risks in this type of product, and they would test for that. So it gives you a little bit of a broader end product test compared to, let's say, organic certification. Because in our end, obviously, we could use a non-organic farmer, because that might like, there's several smaller farms, especially here in Europe as well, that might never been using any type of chemicals or pesticides on their field, or a lot, but they haven't certified themselves organic. They're local, they're smaller, so we could use that, and it would be great. Or that could be the case. We're having sometimes like retail. Why are your fish oil not organic? Organic, it's a wild caught fish, so like we actually prefer that over a farmed organic fish. So that's because people wanted organic, the fish oil. So there's some but we show them, then they'll look at this test report, but that's a very long education of a consumer. But at the end of the day, I think that's what Clean Label Project and other there's other experts in different verticals that are doing a good job creating these testing platforms in order to give consumers more transparency and trust. So that's the Clean Label certification, and then there's the transparency promise, which is one step. That's everything we do run through the lab or some of the lab partners and whatnot. So there's like, you scan a label and we don't release it until we have all the data points. That's how we try to do. So, and that's far beyond, I would say, also regular Clean Label certification, where it's like a percentage they buy product from you, from Amazon, from other places, throw it through the lab to make sure that you're living up to the standards that they're trying to uphold. So that's how those certifications works. Yeah.
Wow, so many layers. It's really awesome and fascinating. And thank you for clarifying that distinction, because I think there has been a loss of trust in the organic label because of that. We don't really understand. And I think some people are arguing that, like, that you could buy an organic certification, or like you said, the smaller farms don't have it because they didn't even need it to begin with. But now we have these layers, and you've done
and that's where it's one
extra steps, which is so awesome.
And I think that's where, like, the future, like, think of it, it's much easier if you actually have the final product tested. Like, if that's what the consumer ends up with in their hand, and not like a lot test somewhere that does this. Obviously, it's harder to implement, but it is not that crazy. Like, it's a lab test for, let's say you spend a few $1,000s on lab testing, but we're talking big brands with really big like it would, I think, increase the quality of what we're getting based on data in many ways. And like, don't go all aboard and test everything. Find the things that we know scientists would say, okay, in fish, we need to be aware of this. In peas, we need to be aware of this. Like, start with that and like implement it that way. So
speaking of that, so I'm curious, like with whey protein, like we love the whey protein. It's delicious.
Love the whey protein.
Yeah.
That's right here.
So what, like for whey protein, like what are the main things? Is it heavy metals, pesticides? What are we looking at there?
Those are the key things: heavy metals, and pesticides, and I would say it's definitely. And even heavy metals may be slightly less than plant proteins. Plant protein seems to be higher in heavy metals per content, per gram of protein you're trying to get out of it, the way you're concentrating it, the way the soil is used, what type of crops is used, and so on. So I would say, generally, whey is cleaner. Like, that's what we've seen from the category studies, that like the Clean Label Project and some of the organizations we also see here in Europe. Generally, whey is cleaner. It's a decent, but then you add different things into it as well. So it might be smaller percentage of the total product. Let's say you have a bag of whey protein, but maybe you have a flavor component, maybe there's a carb component, maybe there's other things potentially in it that you need to be aware of too, that has other angles, right? But the whey protein is, start by trying to find, pasture raised, like cows that are living a decent life somewhere. It's a really good starting point. And then, what we've done is we tested with the whey lots that are coming from these different areas. We've used several different geographic locations, from Austria to, now we're looking at Denmark, to Canada, to New Zealand, and we're also looking at US right now for certain whey farms where we can get it from. So we just basically test that and see how's the purity of that. If we can start with a super high purity, minimally processed whey, that's where we would love to begin. So that's our starting. That's the main ingredients in the whey protein. And then we use coconut sugar in it to give a little bit of carb, also sweetness, to avoid heavy sweeteners and so on. We've decided, like, most people in our audience, we ask them still use it as some kind of workout, a post-workout routine. So just from a flavor component, we've enjoyed that. We're also getting more and more people asking us to do it 100% protein focused, because they said it's so easy to get carbs. I don't want I want pure 100% protein. So we might be playing around with that as well, but in general, that's what we've tried to do with it.
Yeah. And I think so many people need more protein. So I'm just a big fan of protein powder across the board. And I know there's some biohackers or health enthusiasts that are like, oh, protein powder, it's not real food. You shouldn't consume it. But I think in 2024, we all need more protein. It's an easy way to get it as long as it's clean and it's not adding more toxins. Why not take advantage of that? And then I'm glad that you use like really clean ways to, sweeten it a little bit, flavor it a little bit, because especially here in the US, like if you go to like a GNC or something, the crazy protein powders, they have like, I don't know, birthday cake and all these like crazy flavors. And I'm like, what are they putting in there to make it taste good? It's like, please don't buy that stuff. It's so bad.
There's some interesting components in flavoring, and flavoring in Europe and in US are very different, which is also interesting. Same brands might have two very different SKUs of product, one for Europe and one for US, because what you have, I would say, legally, or what is not been banned, as has been banned in Europe, from natural. If you say, look at a natural flavor, that's a question we get all the time. Why do you have natural flavor in it? Because we know that there's issues with harsh chemicals or something like that. But that you can't do in a natural flavor from Europe. So our perspective, that has to come from a natural ingredient, be concentrated. You can't use the same different extraction methods and so on. So you won't have some of the issues that you might find in natural flavors, which is covering a lot of things potentially. So it's just a little bit different. There's some rules coming, but I think in general we are pushing in that direction, and it just takes a long time. Like, it just takes a long time to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say in the US, natural flavors encompasses can be over 100 ingredients.
It can be
I think even more. I think more.
Even more. Well, what about in Denmark?
I think at Denmark, I don't know if our rules are particularly different from the European in general, but it has to come from the original natural source. So in some cases, so you have vanilla, you have some kind of vanilla extract from a vanilla bean or something like that. That's where it starts. So it's a very different component. Then it can be a sweetener to it. You can add some sweeteners, of course you can. But so you could use different things to give that roundness of taste. But yeah, it's definitely not as chemically designed in a natural flavor.
It's actually honoring the definition of natural. Like, what a concept. I don't know how we got this categorized natural flavors in the US. It's not natural. And that goes with the organic certification. It's like, what does natural even mean anymore? We've completely bastardized this concept.
And people used to trust the word natural. I actually heard there was a survey, I think in like 2022 in the United States, if a product said natural, people would buy it. And then in 2023, it changed. People were no longer trusting natural on the label. They were now looking for certified, blah, 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 different things. So people have definitely woken up to the word natural and what that could mean.
Yeah. Well, I think here natural flavors are created by flavorists, like chemists that are called flavorists.
Yeah. In a lab. Yeah.
In a lab. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's many things where we still have some communication. Like, I remember when we were kind of entering into the US and we wanted to sell more products in the US, we were looking at, like, in Denmark and in Europe, we are all non-GMO. Like, so it's like, that's just, you don't have to write non-GMO. It's always non-GMO. But we remember coming into the US that we were looking at, okay, we need organic was a big thing for consumers, which makes sense. So and that would be the same here in Denmark and Europe. That's a big purchase decision maker in like quality and so on. And it is, I'll say, the decision I would make in any product that I don't know anything about. If it was local farmer, I might not care about it. But if I didn't know anything, I would always pick organic. Anyway, tying back, we need to, like the surveys we saw and we looked at, we need to put both the non-GMO logo and organic, USDA organic, though USDA organic also covers non-GMO. So it's like you need that logo because the consumers believe they need that on. So we've been educated. There's so much nuances underneath this, which makes it so hard as a consumer to navigate in. It's like, it's complex.
What
So
about glyphosate? Is that banned in most of Europe or?
I actually don't know for sure because I know it's coming in. So it's like I think it's been
Okay.
banned in most of Europe. But yeah, it's definitely something we've used the same way. But Roundup, like the weed killers that have used it and so on, like we've seen them try to come in here as well. So I'm actually not aware of if glyphosate is banned or not, but it's one of the things we are particularly testing for on all our products as well as part of the
Right.
pesticide panel. We're adding like glyphosate in there as well because that's something that's been used so widely.
Yeah.
I don't
But
personally
yeah.
recall if that's something we found in products here.
Okay. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty toxic. It's everywhere in the
It,
US.
Yeah, it'll
Everywhere.
it,
turn a food into a non-food so quickly.
but it's incredible that PFAS we've seen like it turning up everywhere. Basically, it's forever chemicals that are different compound that are made for various other like genuinely positive purpose when it was made, but had like a really bad side effect. Maybe you would say different on glyphosate, but because it was really designed to kill. Like that was a weed killer or
Right.
whatever it was. It was
Right.
Yeah.
designed to kill. Like maybe a Teflon coated pan was not designed to kill anybody, but it was designed to be smart, right? But
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
Glyphosate designed to kill. It's scary.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
So,
heard that it can like explode the stomach of insects. Like when they eat like GMO corn, their stomachs just like explode. I don't know.
oh
That's a little dramatic,
no.
but
Yeah,
I
it's like
think
cola,
there's a
like
book.
eroding a can over time. You're like, well, if you're pouring that into your body, I think your stomach's
It's
different than
right.
Yeah,
the can.
it's not. There's a book called Silent Spring, which I think kind of explains the story into how the all the different pesticides were started entering, what happened in some of the cities when there was like playing with mass spraying from airplanes and so on, like horrible, yeah, horrible stories. But that was it was. Well, no, we found something we thought was really genuine and smart, and yeah, no, it doesn't look like we get harmed by it, but it's poison. It's designed to kill. That's what most of these chemicals are at the end of the day. And maybe a little of it is not going to hurt us. At least we can't see it hurts us. But,
Mm.
when we look at data points here in Denmark as well, we look at some category data on like crops. There's like every quarter, there's organization that goes out and buy crops, and then they look at what kind of pesticides do they find in like beans, tomatoes, strawberries, anything. They just go kind of a random list through. And sometimes you can find products that 7 different times on a strawberry. For example, 7 different types of pesticide on one strawberry. It's like, do anybody know what all of these different compounds together will do to you, right? Like, did anybody make any scientific testing on that it didn't harm us? Like at least I wouldn't take my chances on it if I could choose, right? So,
The
yeah,
Right.
compounded effect. Yeah, that's a really good
the
point.
compound, the cocktail effect, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, we love
Yeah.
to talk about synergy and nutrients and supplements, but we're not talking about like the bad effects of the bad ones all compounds together. So
No.
interesting. I keep
Yeah.
thinking about what you said earlier about how our diet is eating the diet of the animal. So when it comes to like the whey protein, first of all, I've never had a whey protein like this. I mean this with 100% honesty. I think there's like unicorn dust in it or something. And it's so delicious. And I've always been like a little bit sensitive to dairy, and I've always sought out the cleanest grass-fed whey from cows that were, roaming and eating grass. But
Mhm.
there's something very different about this one. What do we know about the cows and where they roamed and what they're eating? And are they happy? And what do we
At least
learn from
that
the Transparency Project?
That's what we're getting told. Yeah, no, no. So we obviously we look into like the different farms that when we are getting it from first. So what type of like how what are they eating? Like are they actually on pasture? Are they walking around outside and so on? So we look at these things. But we could use from different areas, as I mentioned earlier. There might be, like great New Zealand cows, there might be great Austrian cows, there might be great Canadian, American cows that are living. So it depends a little bit on what we get from out of the testing. So as long as they are on grass and that we don't find any pesticide residue in any of them, then we know that they are basically living up to organic, but they're also living like in nature. And then we try to, like I would say, the processes which our science team could talk way more about than I can. But like the way the most gentle extraction and the least amount of processing to it is actually what they're trying to do. So you could there was I remember from my own training days, and I was like super into how fine like should the particle size of the whey be? Could I get it like what's it called, hydrolyzed or super high? I can't even remember the terms, but like the further you could get down for faster absorption to better muscle build and so on. But I think we've gone the other way around. We try to keep it as close to natural as possible with this, so it's as least processed as we can. That's kind of been the idea for this protein. And then again, it's back to if it really is high quality raw ingredients from the beginning. You see so many people when they get real milk, they don't have any lactose issues, right? Like it's not the same issues they're seeing. High quality and not like ultra pasteurized, all these different things that you can do to potentially harm the structure of the natural ingredients.
I really feel different. It's almost the difference between like eating gluten here and gluten in Europe. Like I notice a massive difference, not just in the way that I feel, but also like looking at the product and feeling the product. It's really kind of soft and fluffy. I've never experienced whey in that way.
We love that product too. So we are, and especially the vanilla. Because I think I love the cacao too, but I just know I'm cacao fanatic on those cacao beans so I just know that there's like vanilla is a cleaner raw ingredient, flavors well, and I love the vanilla flavor. It goes really well in smoothies. It blends into a lot of different things, which I think is for us, and at the Puori office at home with my kids, we use it for so many different things to increase protein intake, as we talked about earlier, because it's so easy to get carbs, especially for kids. It's ridiculously easy to get like carbs in any way, snacks or sugars and so on. So like, how can I increase, the quality protein intake so that we don't have to think about it too much when they're in school or whatever they're getting elsewhere, though you really want. But yeah, so it's a good product to work with.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great because so many people have a dairy sensitivity. And I think, well, like you're saying, is it really a dairy sensitivity or is it the pasteurization, the homogenization? So I would say for people that haven't really done well with whey protein, like give this one a try and see how you feel. It might be different. But for people that really can't do any dairy, I know you also have, I think it's a pea protein. Which I know like the pea proteins, the rice proteins, all these plant-based proteins tend to be really high in heavy metals because of the concentration. So how have you done a pea protein? What's the secret sauce there? How did you figure that out?
It's back to testing raw ingredients as they come in, because we've seen such a big fluctuation in when they come in, like such a big fluctuation, like we had 10, 50 times the amount of different, let's say, heavy metals that you're looking at. So it's really been being super tenacious in that testing protocol. And we've had like we have actually a story right now where we have a batch that's that like we buy X amount of peas from the raw material ingredients, but gets it from here. So we're like, okay, this is what we want. We're getting this. We take that and we put half of it into to bottles to begin with. And we test it, and we test raw material, we test the final product, looks good, it lives up to the standards, we're happy, like we sell it, that it passes our transparency promise. The same batch of peas, apparently from the same area, when we get the second batch, when we're going to do mixes up, suddenly like the I think it was lead content was like 2.5 times or 3 times higher, which suddenly, if you were going up and increasing your protein intake with it, would actually be above what we would have set as our limit. So we're like, how can this happen in this way? We're like, what can we do? And like it's not anybody will sign documents to live up to our standards. So it's not that we can, we can guarantee us to get that because it's a raw ingredient. So we like, we were kind of battling back and forth and like so many times, and we decided we can't sell it. So like, because it doesn't live up to our standard. And like the manufacturer said, but it's legal, it's fine, everything, it lives up to all the European or the US, like there's no like, but we've set a different goal. So we've had to make that really tough decisions financially to say, we paid for it, we can't use it. If you can sell it to somebody else, do it. If you can sell it to somebody else, let us know. And if we can get a little bit out of it, we'll be happy, because it's hard to run a business that way. But we've sit in that situation with the same lot of peas. So I think it's back to just constantly iterating that testing part. And we found out that there's certain ingredients we can't rely on, that even if we get it from the same place, that it's up to the standard that we've set, right? So, and again,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everything else is dangerous or anything, because I think there might be products out there that might be cheap, that are super clean and good, but they don't know either. And then you might have an expensive product that might not be, because people are not testing in that regard. So that's getting back to more testing will equal better awareness and knowledge of where to get it from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that your standards are so high, but you're also empowering the consumer by adding this QR code to the package. Can you talk about that, about how we can actually see the testing?
Yeah, that was kind of the
cool.
dream, because the first time we were like, and to be honest, not many consumers use it. So we can see, based on how we're buying, many people talk about it. And when we've we looked at reviews and think, oh, I really love that I can actually get the data. But we're like, it's interesting that we believe that a lot of people talk, but they don't. And that's part of transparency, and that's fair. I'm not scanning every label if I had the opportunity elsewhere, or maybe I am, maybe I'm a little biased, but at least the dream was that it was so easy that with your phone, when you was in a store, because obviously you can't do that online, but online you can click on the results and go to the landing page. So it's similar easy, but when you had the product, you could really like scan the QR code on your phone, and it would say, okay, is this the batch you're looking at? Like, pick the right batch. Is this collagen? This was collagen. And I would be able to go in and see like a 7 to 10 page lab report on that product. And at least if I was a trainer, if I was somebody that was, again, recommending it to others, that's what I would like to do, especially with the knowledge that we had. So that's the idea.
I guess
But
I'm guilty. I have scanned my vanilla. I have not scanned my chocolate. Now that I think about it, I haven't scanned the chocolate bag. I'll do that
Same,
today.
but it's interesting because it just creates this inherent trust where it's like you did it one time and now you're like, well, I trust the company, but it is good that we can always go deeper if we want to.
Exactly. And and there's people doing it, which we are excited about. And we get some really interesting feedback on that. And we hope that, look, hopefully, like we're saying to the Clean Label Project, please use as much you can as a case study, that it can be done. Because if we want all the other brands to do the same, because then you're comparing apples to apples, and you're not just marketing on, let's say, protein powder. I'm totally aware that, let's say you want like a different flavor. Now you want strawberry and we don't have it. You should be able to go out and find that and find it clean from somewhere else. And then you come back to our vanilla, maybe because now you want vanilla again or whatever it is. But like, if we were comparing apple to apples, it would be so much easier. But I think I've been a time optimist before. And I think we've been saying, in 5-10 years, everybody's doing this. But it does take a little longer to kind of change the whole setup, but luckily it is moving in that direction. There's some awareness coming.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how cool would that be, even just like to go into the health food store and be able to scan every supplement and see, especially with all the supplements on the market that don't even have the healthy ingredients that you're looking for. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, which is crazy.
That's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit more about your fish oil product, because I'm hearing a lot now, people, they don't want to take fish oil because it could be rancid, it could be filled with heavy metals. And of course, you don't want to be spending money on something that's actually doing more harm than good. So I'm curious, with your fish oil product, have you found like a specific area of the world where these fish are cleaner, and yours are anchovies, I believe, and why you chose that?
Yeah, so we looked at a lot of different fishing. That was our first product. So we're super passionate about everything that goes into it. And what we found is, there's really, when you look at omega-3 fatty acids or fish oils, there's really two things that you want. One thing is the active ingredients, the EPA, DHA. The other thing is you want it fresh, so it's not rancid. There's three things. And then you want it free from dioxins and heavy metals and whatnot. So those are the things you're looking at when you're buying fish oil. So we were like looking at all the different areas. So oxidation, that can happen in encapsulation process. That can happen when they first do the first bulk order into a barrel of fish oil. It can happen in the press of the fish. It can, there's so many steps that if you can go through your supply chain and really understand, okay, we want to score, let's say, oxidation often measured in TOTOX, like total oxidation of the oil, which is a combination of different metrics. But let's say you wanted a TOTOX score that was, I think the allowed for sale is like below 35 or something, or 50, depending on where you are. I think GOED, say it's 20, that should be fine. I think, you're looking at a good quality fish oil, they should probably aim at below 10 or around 10-ish. And then we have like very few brands that like we hover around like from 3 to 6-ish in the final product of oxidation. So that is a really fresh oil. When you chew into it, you won't have that really harsh fishy aftertaste. You will actually like eating fresh sushi. You can really feel the difference if the fish is fresh or not. So I think figuring out like what can we do from that, like in that path to get to the freshest point. If we use anchovies, these have a really high amount of omega-3 fatty acid in their bodies of their flesh. So it's like a high, it's a fattier fish. It's a small fish, which means it's smaller in the food chain, meaning it has accumulated less from other fish. If I go tuna, I would have a big fish that's eaten other fish. So what's the diet of my diet looking like? If you look at that again, and the anchovies is a fairly clean fish. So we use that's pressed into the raw oil, and then it's really getting from the raw oil, then you want to, molecular distill it, but as gentle as you can to not increase. Everything you do that kind of touches it will increase oxidation level potentially of it, but you still want to make molecular distill a little bit, because if you just use raw anchovies oil pressed first, you would maybe only get, and I don't have the exact numbers, but let's say around 30% EPA DHA. And we were aiming at, let's say, 75% of it is EPA DHA in the capsule, like our omega-3 fatty acids. So you would try to get the EPA DHA out of it, and then finally you would make sure that it's actually clean and pure. So those are, and it's fresh.
Okay. Quite the
That's
process.
great, because I look at like omega profiles all the time. I'm like, I recommend the fish oil. I hope this actually gets into your body and raises the levels. We'll see. We do our best, but that information, education about the ox profile is really helpful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that whole
we've
process.
Seen that on people's.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry for making it long. But yeah, I think we've seen that. We've seen that with people as well, coming from their functional nutritionist or whoever they've worked with, and we actually saw my numbers was like really increasing. I'm getting omega-3 fatty acid into my blood.
That's awesome.
What do anchovies eat? Do we know?
Algae, seaweed.
I would say plankton and algae and so on, without being
trying to search for it.
Plankton.
An expert on that. Yeah, but, plankton. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a feeling it was something like that. Yeah, because it's the smash for fish, right? It's salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring, right?
Sure.
Herring,
sounds
yes.
right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, smash. So if you are looking for just what seafood to eat, not just in a supplement, but smash tends to be a safer bet. But again, our water is still polluted. So, yeah. Well, great. Thank you for doing all that. Yeah.
So you have a few other products. I'm curious, are you looking to expand? I'm sure it's very limited in how quickly you can expand because the testing is so rigorous. But what are some other products that you are really excited or proud of that you want to share?
Yeah, so I think we touched on the omega-3 and the proteins. So really some of the products we are really super proud of, and where there's magic to be done in doing it and how you're doing it. We also really happy with like our multi-magnesium product with like a little bit of zinc and malic acid to aid absorption and so on. So there's like a good bioavailable form of magnesium we like. We love that product. But we also have a few new products that are playing with in the pipeline. I think one of them you will like. I'm sitting here with I'm testing it right now and consuming it myself, which I've been really excited about. But it's a creatine product. So
yes, that excites me.
Yeah.
So a purity tested creatine, basically. And that's again to see what we saw when we bought creatine products and tested them. When people are buying creatine, they might be looking at banned substances or these type of things, which is, now you're going maybe into a more performance category, though not necessarily what it should be. it should probably be a broader, more generally consumed supplement because of all the benefits we've seen in the data, ranging from, I'll say general health and well-being, not losing muscle mass as we get older, either women or men, but maybe even particularly women as we get older, maybe don't eat as much meat or shellfish and so on, doesn't get as much creatine in their diet. I would highly recommend that. So my wife, my mom, say this would be a product I would consume just on the side.
Yeah. And for mental health, hugely
brain health.
important.
Exactly. So I would say that's an interesting one that we're excited about. And I think our audience, what we did was we do like a survey in our user base, and we were actually kind of interested, we were like, what are the products you want to see from us next? And the one that came out on top was actually creatine, which we were a little surprised about at the time. So we're like, okay, we got to go out and find the different sources and see if there's anything to be done in the category. Like, is there a reason for us to exist? Creatine is not a natural ingredient; it's a synthesized product, right? So it's actually made it's not that I'm sourcing it from an animal coming somewhere. So now it's something that's created in a lab or a fermentation process or whatever it could be. And we were looking at, is there a difference in those sources when we look at them? And again, it probably will come back to the packaging, what that stands in afterwards. It will come back to the heavy metals, is what we've seen a little bit difference in, and that's what we've seen. So again, we felt, okay, there's at least, we want to avoid these things. Let's do that. And then we added a little bit of taurine, the amino acid taurine, actually, because we thought it's a nice synergy effect to it. We like people increasing that amino acid a little bit. So we felt that from brain and not just being a muscle product, it was an interesting ingredient to add in. So those two ingredients is what it is. So that's why I call it Creatine Plus right now, or at least for lack of better pures.
So fun.
Exciting.
Yeah, I think
So
creatine's having a bit of a heyday, maybe taurine on its heels. And I think this myth that it's just for bodybuilders is starting to dissolve. So that's exciting. Yeah.
Well, and taurine is getting some publicity for its anti-aging properties. And no, that doesn't mean go drink Monster energy drinks.
No.
No, that's not the place to get your taurine. I promise you that. Yeah. Cool. That's very exciting. Well, Oliver, thank you for sharing all of this. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think actually now we talk a lot about food supplements and environmental toxins in general. I think it's important to say food in general should be your source of nutrients. So let's just say that we say that, we believe that, we live that way, we eat that way. Try to get as much as you can from food sources. Try variation. If you don't know what you're consuming, go local, go what's in season, what's fresh and so on. That can be a good way, especially on the crops around you. But try variation. Go wild sometimes when you're talking proteins. It doesn't have to always be, let's say, beef or chicken and so on. Try like some wild animals as well, could be a way. But again, if you give some variation, I would say that's a good way to get quality proteins and so on into your body.
Great.
What else? Environmental toxins. I wouldn't be, I would be aware. I wouldn't be scared. I would be conscious. I wouldn't be, I can't take anything in. Conscious. Look at the big things. Your own drinking water. What are you drinking at home? The oxygen that you breathe, like where you're living in an area that's more oxide. Do you need like air purifier or anything? The big ones, what supplements or foods are you consuming on a daily basis? That's where I would start from environmental toxins. So protein powder, people might consume quite a lot of it. So I would spend a little extra on getting that quality there. The same goes fish oil. I use myself as an example. I've been consuming this for 14 years and I've done much larger doses than I would write on the label as well, based on the testing I've done with exciting and very capable different functional nutritionists that have been monitoring my blood and looking at my inflammation status and so on. So I would have polluted myself if I just took something that was like randomly polluted in some of these journeys, because we're talking a decent dose of something coming from the same again and again and again. So I would when I look at environmental toxins, look at the big ones, the ones at home, the things you're consuming on a daily basis or putting on your body on a daily basis. That's where I would start and ask questions. The consumers out there, ask questions to your brands. That's how we can change. because I believe all brands actually want to change and be good. So yeah, sorry, that was a
Yeah,
long roundup, but I think that's a key
that's
takeaway.
great. No, it's so important. Your air, your water, personal care products, things you're consuming every day. It's so, so important. And I like the
Yeah.
quote you said, don't be scared, be aware. Like
Mhm.
that's a great tagline for environmental toxins. You don't want to just be like afraid and stay home all day. You know, you got to get out and live
Mhm.
your life, but just be educated. It's great.
Be educated. We've said many times, never accept not knowing. So there's certain things you shouldn't accept not knowing. And like, keep asking that question. So if you're in doubt, like keep asking it. If it's the body lotion you're using, the drinking water, like do what you can.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stay curious. We love that. Wonderful
Stay
advice.
curious.
So for anyone that wants to find more Puori, the website is quite simple. It's Puori, pureorigin.com, where they can kind of browse these products. Anywhere else you would send our audience to learn more and be more educated, become more educated?
I would say the Clean Label Projects website is a good place as well. And I think they will gonna go over some evolution to become even more user-friendly and so on, is what we're hearing from them on the side of it. I would say EWG as a place, the Clean 15 and so on. These lists are actually super helpful for you to make better decisions. Be aware of what you're being shown on social media as well. Sometimes there could be some, like, we see that the scary stuff tend to get more attention and drive up the algorithms and so on. So just be aware. But no, I think those are some good places. And follow Puori on our Instagram, and we'll put out some content now and then, and we'll tag along. Sign up for our newsletter. That's also a good way to get aware of what's going on. So
Perfect. We will add that
Great.
to the show notes so everyone can scroll down. All right.
Great.
One more question. You shared so much advice, but we always wrap up with just one final piece of advice. If there's something that our audience can start doing today to optimize their health and wellness, what would it be?
I'm gonna throw us in a different direction, just
Great.
because I've talked so much about food, nutrition, and training, which is where I would normally be. I would say a little bit more mental health. Read like 1 or 2 pages a day just to begin with. If I should start you on a reading journey, I would start you with, and this is going to be a plug for someone who doesn't know he's getting plugged for it, but Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic. It's stoicism, getting into something, being aware of your thoughts and what you want with your life and so on. I think the old Stoic was so amazing at, just reflecting. Marcus Aurelius, like reading his night journal, is today a book that's like, it's just impressive. But if you read 1 page a day in the Daily Stoic, you read really, there's one little quote from some ancient wisdom, like philosopher or, a Stoic person who has been around for a long time. And then there's like a little bit of interpretation from Ryan Holiday, which I think he does phenomenally well. He's like a modern stoicist. So I would really read 1 page a day on that. I think that will make you happier and more aware of what you're doing in your life at the same time. And it doesn't take more than a minute. Yeah.
I like that a lot.
That's great advice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you, Oliver, for everything. And thanks to everyone that tuned in today. We will see you next time.